Alright, here we go, another episode. And we're just going to watch this one through at full speed once, and then I will do some opinionating, and then we'll come back and we'll watch each of these passes in half speed. So here we are. This is just another set of passes between myself and Viscount Alex. I think this was the second set of passes of the day. And that was not some great fighting on my part, mostly just backing up. Very aggressive on Viscount Alex's part. And so if you watch the first episode, you'll see that this one, the passes are going a little bit longer, and I think I credit that more than anything to Alex starting to get dialed in. Just skip past this part where we're chit-chatting. So I think you'll see I started out strong, but once he got warmed up and dialed in, chit chat. Went for an arm shot there, but no power on it. Ran into his tree. Reset. So I think on that one there, I tried to do kind of a shield hook, and it didn't work out for me. Although I suspect mostly that's because, I don't do that often, so it was something I just thought I would work on. Yeah, now we're talking about it, so we'll come back to that one when we do the slow-mo. Some more chit-chat. Whoops. And it looks like, there we go. It's a little bit better range work on my part. Although we started backing up into the tree again. Set up again here. And so this is kind of an interesting pass because, as I recall, I think my intent here was more just to work on some different approaches. As opposed to necessarily just standing over him and killing as fast as possible. Which is and eventually I'm going to lose this because I was just standing around trying some different approaches. But yeah, there it goes. But I just want to say, I mean, there's really no such thing as a loss in practice. Coming from judo, one of the big sayings was to leave your ego off of the mats. And I try to do that in heavy practice as well. You know, if I'm working on something and I take a loss in practice, I mean, that's really not a big deal as long as I've gained something or learned something. Anywho, here we go. Not quite sure what we were discussing there. Might have been an arm shot. So both of those legs were kind of mushy because we were pretty rapidly rotating away from them. Yeah. I'd been talking there about a pass and a half ago a little bit about how my shield that day felt like it was really twisting a lot, more so than it has in the past. So I think something about my grip changed. And I think that might be the last pass, or almost the last. Let's see here. One more. Alright, so not a lot of commentary at full speed because, for the most part, they were going pretty quick. But here we go at half speed. So let's get set up on this first one. Let's see if there's anything that we can learn. So I've gotten set up in a pretty basic defensive stance. My sword is fairly level in front of my eye line. My shield is held sort of around the tip of my shield, or top of my shield is roughly around my nose. My shield is held pretty far back against my shoulders. In general, that means that there's really not much of a slot for anybody to throw a flat snap into, and it's not too hard to defend my legs. So, yeah, it's a pretty standard, helpful defensive position. And right out of the gate, I've raised my sword just a little bit, but not too much. So I step to the left there and throw a flat snap, which doesn't go very well. And I get a little tangled up. Big step. Yeah, bring my feet, I think, a little too close together. And then I think, no, something about that leg shot wasn't quite good. But I suspect that one was good, yeah. So dial it back just a little bit. So here is probably would have been a good opportunity to throw maybe a back edge of some variety. And I would have been throwing it because you can see Alex's shield is down here, which means there's a whole lot of unshielded space right here. My sword is pretty out of position though, so. And it looks like Alex is going to see the pretty obvious huge spot to land a shot. Nope. So instead he threw a Moulinet, which I backed out of. And there we got tangled up in the tree, but then he did get me with the leg shot there at the end. So I guess part of the lesson here is don't get tangled up in trees. Anywho, moving on. And we've set up again. Basically the same setup. So see, if you saw, he took a little step, and at any rate, I don't know if I noticed or just didn't react, but he did get a bit of a step into range. So what I did there was a bit of a half step, like so, and then I caught up with myself, and then I threw, and my intent was to throw down into here, but he's going to block it with this sword. Yeah, I was throwing way too high for that kind of shot. And so I recycle. And what's interesting is I do have my basket hilt inside his shield here, in a pretty good defensive position. I mean, there's not a whole lot to hit with an onside on my body. And so I'm inside his shield, and I throw an arm shot, and I think my mistake is that when I throw the arm shot, instead of just standing where I'm at, because I'm pretty defended, my basket hilt is inside his shield. As you can see, I start taking a step to my right, and I've made this kind of weird C shape right there. And in fact, it even gets very aggressive, like this, you know. And so I can't say I'm surprised that there wasn't enough power on that shot, because I think my body mechanics are just all wrong there. And what I really should have done was just stood my ground, because there really wasn't anything he could hit me with as an onside. So if we scroll back a little bit, so I'm leaning back, just to, if we use this as a Renaissance pose kind of thing, I'm leaning back in sort of a weird S-curve, which is probably terrible body mechanics. And Alex has a really pretty broad, lungy kind of stance there. So I would say he definitely has the better position of the two of us. He's doing a good job of maintaining his defense too, because I really feel like I don't have much to throw at. So I'm getting back into kind of a defensive posture, but you can see I've sort of turned sideways to him, and that's leaving these legs open, although he'll hit. Yeah, so he hits me there. And it just was a little bit mushy. Looks like it caught kind of the tip of the plates as they were swinging outwards. So this would have been a good spot to hit him in the head if I had any kind of power. You know, and I wound up instead, again, aiming for the arm, and there was just nothing on it. And again, I think it's because, if you look, I've got this weird kind of C curve going on. So my hips are falling out of the equation. Yeah, and as he's going down, he manages to, he throws an offside that I block, and then an onside that comes around, and you can't quite see it, but it just taps me in the head. bunch of chit chat, and here we go. So setup, some patient maneuvering. Throw a thrust. So I threw a thrust and then turned it into a moulinet, but didn't get anything. Let's see, there's the thrust. Yeah, and we're agreeing that there was nothing on either of those. And then we talk a little bit, and I was just saying I tried to throw the thrust, and then pop into a slightly more defensive posture, and then throw the moulinet. Again, so threw an onside arm shot, and it didn't work. Again, no heat on it. Alex comes after me very aggressively, and I run into the tree, which if I had backed out and around, so if you imagine that I'm kind of here-ish, you know, and I back straight back, you know, I back into the tree, right? If I go that direction, kind of. What I really should have done is stepped out and around, kind of like this. So if you haven't noticed already, Alex likes to press aggressively, and I do not like to be pressed. I would much prefer to play a distance game where we sort of snipe at each other. So that's just something for me to work on. So there goes the attempted shield hook. I mean, it seems to have worked, more or less. I step in. You know, I've got his shield now. But the mistake I make, I think, is by throwing for this sort of hammer blowy onside instead of getting the shield hook and then just throwing around to his sword side. You know, if I had thrown an offside around to here somewhere, I mean, I think I could have hit that and hit it with some authority, so. But now we're stuck, yeah, so now I'm stuck in the shield hook, and I kind of got target lock and got focused in on his head, which was just never going to happen. And Alex does not get target lock and just throws a flat wrap. I mean, not flat, just a very efficiently targeted wrap. And then he hits me in the arm. So I think the takeaway lesson there is I did the shield hook. I should have thrown to his suddenly exposed offside. And when that didn't work, probably backed out of the shield hook. Or maybe better, rotated away from it. So we talk about it a little bit. We talk about it a lot. Okay, here we go. So flat snap, offside, doesn't work. It's possible I could have made that offside work if, so flat snap, if I had actually stepped in to get a little bit closer to him. Yeah, I mean, if I had stepped in another 5 inches, I think that would have been a real good on the hip offside. And I think that's one of my flaws as a fighter in general is I don't really fully understand when I can just stand my ground or when I need to step in versus stepping out. I tend to default to just stepping out and away to avoid getting hit, which is very defensive, I guess, but doesn't necessarily lead to many victories. So that one got pretty messy, but he threw at least 2 good headshots in there. The first one of which I took, but as is correct, he kept throwing until he knew I was definitely done. So he hits me in the shield. I just throw a kind of a slot shot into nothing. So this shot here has potential for me, but if you look at where my hand is right here, yeah, I don't get cocked back very far, and he's coming into me, so there's just not a lot of room for the sword to move in. Because I do throw a shot there, but yeah, it's over. Okay. So the early maneuvering, trying not to hit the tree while we maneuver. And so that one worked out well. So if you see, go through the maneuvering here. So there's just the slightest little pump fake. Right here. So the basket of my hilt is, or the basket of my sword is going just a little bit high right there. And the tip rises just a little tiny bit, and that gets his shield to move up, which you can see it just did. And at the same time I'm stepping in, and I just drop it in for the leg shot. So tiny little fake there, or at least to me I feel like that's a very subtle fake. And you know, Alex bit on it, and that wound up being the leg shot. So one of the interesting things about fakes in the SCA that I found is the better the opponent you're fighting, the more subtle the fake will be, because they're not going to bite on a huge fake. You know, versus sometimes people who are pretty new, where they won't bite on a subtle fake at all because they just don't see it, which is kind of funny. You know, so anyways, he's down here on his knees. And like I said, on this one, more than anything, I was just practicing different intros or approaches to fighting someone on their knees. So I start out with a thrust. Yeah, a couple thrusts there. Kind of a faked thrust and then a wrap, but the wrap was no good. So let's see why it was no good. And I think it's because, so I'm here. Okay, so if his sword wasn't there, that probably would have been a good wrap, so I'm not too fussed about that, but he's got his sword blocking that side of his head. You know, you can see the wrap hits it hard enough to knock his sword out of the way, but of course that takes a lot of heat out of the actual helmet impact. So then the mistake here is that I just kept my arm here-ish and recycled, and there just wasn't any heat on that. Plus he blocked it too. But I don't think that was a good arm position, even for someone like me who has a fair amount of upper body strength. So then I back out. I talk a little bit about, you know, what I'm doing. You know, I'm just trying out some different stuff. Since I've got you down there, I'm just going to try out some things. So tried a slot shot, didn't work. Tried a couple thrusts. Still just not quite enough on the thrusts. So, yeah, what happened here was I got just into Alex's zone, death zone, the zone where he can start swinging and potentially hitting, and didn't really do anything to prevent myself from getting hit. I stepped in, but I'm not swinging. I'm blocking. I swing there, but it wasn't a very good shot. And then I step in with really no good intent, and he just comes right over the tip of my shield and clocks me, as you can see right there. Shield drops just a little bit. Boom. And then we chit chat about it for a while. And get set up again. Couple fakes on Alex's part, which I don't really bite on, although I do back out of the way. He does it the same thing, or he does the same thing. Throw a flat snap. Nothing much. I think he managed to hit me. Do I say where? Let's see here. It's kind of hard to tell from this angle, but it looks like he hits me in the shoulder. Yeah, so he got me in the arm. And since I was just wearing demi gauntlets, I just took that as, death. So we could start the next pass. Some more chit chat, and we're set up again. So we both threw the leg shot there, but as you can see, we were both rotating away from it, almost in unison, which is kind of funny. And so, yeah, since we're both rotating away from it, it doesn't quite work. Had some interesting crossed footwork there for just a second. Yeah, and we're both agreeing that neither of those was any good. And I will say, too, a little bit, I think my calibration might have dropped slightly over the past 4 months, because there were a couple shots where Alex was kind of like, I don't know if those felt really good to me, that he threw to me that I took. And I guess for me, sometimes I feel like if it was just a clean shot where I got caught out with very poor defense, especially in practice, I'll go ahead and take it anyways, because I think it's on me to not open my defense up quite that much. But anywho, so a couple shots to not much to see if my shield does anything. Gets pretty sloppy there. And what has happened by this point is that I don't really have anything going on. He's sort of sideways, so I'm kind of sideways to him. And so he's got quite a lot of this that he could be swinging at. So I get my shield over there. So I do get rotated around and get my shield in the way, but my sword hand isn't really doing anything. And what's happened at this point is my shield has rotated almost entirely sideways and is now basically doing nothing to defend me. And so he just throws right into this suddenly open slot and clocks me on top of the head. Whoop hop. So like I said a little bit earlier, I feel like my shield is rotating much more than it used to. You know. So something about my grip has changed, I think. And there we go. So another round. Get set up. Yeah, I think he just clocked me with an offside right out of the gate. So you can see Alex is still doing the thing where I get set up and then he gets set up and he takes a big step in, which gives him some range advantages. So I start moving very aggressively to my right and I throw into nothing, but I've exposed all of this. And it continues to get exposed even worse. So yeah, I'm practically sideways onto him, and he just throws into the opening. You know, I realize I'm in a bad spot, so I try to throw this offside. And he just comes right over the top, hits me in the head. So then we chit-chat for a bit, get set up again. Thrust, leg. So thrust to onside leg, offside, a few blocks, start getting pressed, start backing up. So yeah, I start backing up and my defense kind of falls apart. So I'm starting to get pressed. I stop my forward motion there and start my backward motion. My feet are too close together. I'm all kind of coiled, or I'm all tangled up in my own self. You know, trying to free my sword, which I do, but he still gets me in the head. So here's the final pass. Swing to the leg. Not quite good enough. So let's see here. I swung to the leg. Wasn't quite good enough. There's some exposed space there. And he swings and maybe gets me in the chest. Nope. So shield is all weirdly tangled up. But I'm coming back around for an offside. Blocks it with his shield. And he throws a wrap. Looks like that gets me. Yeah, got me with the wrap. So if we look at what Alex is doing here, so defense, I start coming in real aggressively. That shot might have been low too. Blocks enough of that. As you can see, his shield has rotated, so he caught some of that with his shield, which takes the heat off of it. He's kind of curled up, but he straightens up, and then he starts to attack. And he just steps deep. I mean, my shield has probably come out too far at this point, and so he just steps deep, and you can see the hilt or the basket of his sword is just past the edge of my shield, and that gives him all the distance he needs there to throw a wrap. And that is it. So that's episode 2. thanks for watching.